Hello everyone, today we're going to be building this Notepad clone in Java using the Swing framework. In this app, you're able to write multi-line text, save a new text file, load a text file, be able to zoom in and zoom out of the text file, and also change the font features like the styling and the size. If that interests you, then consider watching this tutorial. I guarantee that you'll learn something new. I'll also leave the link to the GitHub repo in the comments below, but I do recommend that you watch the full tutorial to understand how the app works, just in case you want to add this on your resume. Without a further ado, relax and let's learn how to make this Notepad clone in Java. Now let's go over the plan of action. First, we're going to prepare our project, and it just involves downloading a jar file that we're going to use for our project. Next, we're going to build the Notepad GUI. Then we're going to implement the features from the file menu, such as the save as, open, save, new, etc. Next will be the edit menu, which will have the undo and redo functionality. Then we're going to work on the format menu, which will allow us to wrap our text, align the text, and access the font menu where we can change the styling and the size of the font. And lastly, we're going to work on the view menu, which will allow us to zoom in and zoom out in our Notepad. And that's it. By the end of this video, we should have a working Notepad application. First, we'll go to this site here, which I'll link down in the description. This jar file will allow us to change the look and feel of our GUI. It will transform our GUI from this to this. So we're going to select the first option here. Make sure you remember where you download the zip file. Now we wait for the download to finish. Once it's done, let's head over to our code editor. So we're going to create a folder named lib. This folder will contain the jar file that we just downloaded. So locate the jar file that we downloaded and place it in the lib folder. So we want to right click and then select copy, then paste that file directly into the lib folder. Hit OK. Next, we'll add this jar file to our project structure. To do that, select File at the top and then select the Project Structure option. Then select Modules. Then we'll click on the plus button and select the jar option. Locate the jar file in our project's lib folder. Select it and then hit OK. Then hit Apply and OK again. Good job. So now we've successfully integrated the jar file into our project. Next up, we're going to start coding the Notepad GUI. So the reason why we use the invoke later method is to make updates to our GUI more thread safe. Now let's give our GUI a fresh new look by updating its look and feel. Our GUI feels a bit empty, so let's start adding some components to it. Now that we've added our file menu to our GUI, let's start working on implementing the logic. First, we'll be adding the logic for the Save As feature. So with Save As, we will want to show this save dialog, and this is made possible through the JFileChooser class. Next, we'll create a package called Assets in our source folder, which we'll use to store our text files. The reason I create it now is because we will be setting the default path for our JFileChooser. So we have to paste the relative path of our assets package. So now, every time we open the JFileChooser, it will open relative to our assets package. Next, we're going to add a filter so that we're only able to select .txt files. Remember that we also applied a filter where we can only select .txt files. I'm going to create a random .txt file just to show this. As you can see here, we can only see the .txt file. we will need access to the JText area that we declared locally in the add GUI component method, so we will be making it as a global variable. Here, we don't even need to add the .txt extension, as our program will do that for us. Next, we're going to work on the open logic. So actually we need to add some logic to the new feature, which we will use for the open logic. The do-click method makes it so that it executes the action that we implemented with the open feature. So now we'll be storing the text in a string builder. Does anyone know why we use a string builder here instead of using a regular string? Leave your answers down in the comments. So what this while loop is checking is to see if there is any lines to be read from the text file. If there are no more lines to read, then the while loop will stop. So when we press open, our JFile chooser should appear. Then when we select our file, it should display the contents to our JText area. And also, the title of our notepad should change to the file name. That's odd. Why did it say saved successfully when I canceled? So the thing is that we also need to add a check to see whether the user has clicked on the save button or not. Depending on the user's action, it will return a status of what happened, and that happens to be of an int type. So now, what should happen is that the save successfully dialog shouldn't appear after canceling, and that we can only save the text file after the user pressed the save button. Nice, so we have to start doing this with the rest of the features like open. Next, we're going to work on the save feature. So what this feature will do is that it will update the content of our current text file. With save, we need to know what file we are currently working on, so we're going to create a variable for it. Actually, before we continue with save, in new, we also want to make sure that we reset the current file variable. And also, with open, we want to update the current file. Lastly, we also have to update the current file in our save as logic. Alright, now we can continue with save. So when we try to click on the save option on a new file, we perform the save as function instead. So what should happen is that when pressing the save option, it will overwrite the current file's content. Next, we're going to implement the exit logic. So when the user presses the exit option, the Notepad app should close. Next, I encountered this bug. So the bug is that when we are about to save to a new file and then we choose to cancel, we get an exception. This bug occurs because I assumed that the user will save a new file. But if they didn't, the current file will still be null and will cause an exception. A solution would be to do another check to see if the current file has been updated or not. Nice, the bug's been fixed. So this was the last thing that we had to do for the file menu. Let's do a quick overview. So far, our Notepad should be able to reset the Notepad, open a txt file, save a txt file, save it onto a current txt file, and exit the application. Now we'll be working on the edit menu. Within the edit menu, we will have the ability to undo and redo. Time to implement their logic. So Swing has a built-in way on undoing and redoing things through the Undo Manager class. How it works is that every time we type in our JText area, it will add an edit event to our undo manager, which will handle our undos and redos. So when we press undo, it will undo our recent action. Here, when we undo something, we can have the option to redo it too. Next, we will be working on the Format menu. In this menu, we will implement the word wrapping, aligning of the text, and configuring our font settings. Now we're going to implement the logic for the word wrap. What this feature does is that it automatically moves words from the end of a line to the beginning of the next line to fit within the notepad. This is an example of not wrapping our text. As you can see, it doesn't automatically go to the next line once it reaches the end of the notepad. Swing has two ways of wrapping text. One is wrapping it by the character, which is what I'm about to show you guys. And the other is to wrap by word, which is what we're going to be implementing. As we can see here, that if there isn't enough space, the whole word goes to the new line. We also want to give the user the option to unwrap the words too. One thing I noticed is that when we type past the screen, we aren't able to follow it. See here, we aren't able to follow what we are typing, and that results us not seeing what we're typing. To fix this, we'll make the text area scrollable, and this is made possible with the JScrollPane class. To use this, all we have to do is pass the text area within it, and then instead of adding the text area to our frame, it'll be our scroll pane instead. Nice, so now it shows us what we're typing even after reaching the end. So next, we're going to implement the text align logic. What should happen is that when we choose left, the text should go to the left, and when we choose right, the text should go to the right. Now we're going to be working on the font menu. With the font menu, we will be able to change the font family, styling, and the size of our font. So our font menu will actually be a dialog that appears when we select the font option in the format menu. First, we're just going to be building the frame of our dialog. So what should happen is that after clicking on the font option, our font menu should pop up. Next, we'll want the dialog to be modal, which means that we shouldn't be able to interact with the notepad until the menu is closed. Now we can't interact with the notepad until we close the menu. Next, we'll start adding components we will use to change the font settings. The first component will be relating to choosing the font family. We will want to display the text area's font family, so we're going to create a getter method for it in our GUI class. Right now they can edit this field, which we don't want, so let's change that. Next, we're going to display all available fonts that the user can choose. The list of fonts are shown, but we can't see all of them yet, so we'll need to make it scrollable. Nice, so now we can scroll through all of the available fonts that are built in. Now we'll add the logic to our list of available fonts. So what we want to happen is that if the user clicks on one of the fonts, it will update the current font field to the selected font. Here we will choose mouse clicked, mouse entered, and mouse exited. So when we click, the current font field should update. Alright, next we will add indicators that lets users know that they are clickable. We do this by making it so when they hover over the font, it will be highlighted. So next we'll want to remove the highlights when the mouse stops hovering over a font. The next component we will add will relate to changing the font style. Right now only plain is showing, so let's add the rest. Now we have all the styles, but it looks a bit off, so let's fix that. Next, we're going to make it so that when the user clicks on a style, it would also update the current style field. Select mouse clicked, mouse exited, and mouse entered. So we'll need to repeat this process for the other styles. Copy these lines of code. Then paste it here. So now we can change the current style field. Next, we're going to add the components relating to changing the font size. So for some odd reason, it isn't showing properly unless we parse the int value in the JText field to a string. Next, we will add a list of sizes the user can choose from. Now we will make them clickable and update the current size field. Again, select mouse clicked, mouse exited, and mouse entered. Oops, I made a mistake here. So this is supposed to be font size value label, not font size label only. There you go. Next, we're going to add the feature to choose the color of the font. This box will update to the current color of our font. Now we will be adding a button that will allow us to choose our color. Now let's add some functionality to this button. So when we press the button, a dialog should appear where we can select from a spectrum of colors. And when we select a color, it will update the box next to the button to that color. It's kind of hard to see the box a bit, so we are going to make a border around it to make it more apparent. That's better. Now we'll add the apply and cancel buttons. Next, we will add the functionality to these buttons. So when the user presses the apply button, it will update our text area's font with the new font settings. So we will need to refer to some of the other components that we created, and we'll do this by making them into global variables. The first one will be the current font field so that we can get the selected font family. We also need to know the style and the size, so we're going to need to convert the current font style field and the current font size field into global variables. Next, we will need a reference to the color box to change the font color. We are good to go. Now we will apply the new font settings to the text area. So now we should be able to change the font settings through our font menu. We'll also make it so that when the user hits apply, we dispose of the menu afterwards. So let's try this again. Now let's add functionality to our cancel button, and all it does is just dispose our menu. Lastly, we will work on the view menu, which will allow us to zoom in and zoom out in our notepad. First, we're going to add view to our toolbar. Now let's add functionality to them. How Zoom is going to work in this project is that we're basically just going to increment or decrement the font size to give it an appearance that we are zooming in and out. We're going to want the current font of our text area, as we will be keeping everything the same but the size. Since we are zooming in, we're going to be incrementing the size value. So now we should give the illusion of zooming into our notepad. Now we will add functionality to the zoom out option. The code here will be similar to zoom in, except we decrement the size by 1 instead of incrementing. Now we're going to make it so that it restores back to its default zoom, which basically restores to the default font size of 12. So when we select the restore to default option, it just takes us back to the font size of 12. And that's it. If you made it this far, congratulations, because you successfully built this Notepad text editor in Java. Leave a like and subscribe if you found this video helpful or just want to support me. Doing so motivates me to keep making more content like this and grow a community of like-minded developers. This project was chosen from a poll I do on my channel upon every new release, and so that means that there will also be a new poll out right now, so make sure to vote. Alright, let's quickly go over the features that we implemented. So first is the ability to write text into our GUI. Next, when we try to save a new file, it will actually call on the save as logic where it loads a pop-up asking us where to save the file. Doing so will create a new file with our saved text. Pressing new will reset the whole notepad. We can select open to open a text file, so let's open the file that we just saved. Next, we have the option to undo and redo things on our notepad. We can also wrap our words if it becomes too long. And our text area is scrollable, so we can write text all the way down here. We can also align our text to the left or right. Next, I think is the coolest part is that we can customize our font settings. So we can change the font family, font style, font size, and even the font color. We also have the ability to zoom in and zoom out of our text. Lastly, we can exit our notepad with the exit option. So if you like to do more projects like these to improve your skills or add to your resume, then I recommend doing this project.